final presentation is by Jonathan Tidor and Rohil Prasad from Lexington High School in Lexington, Massachusetts.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Tidor, and this is Rohil Prasad, and our research is on the staged self-assembly of Wang tiles. This is a topic that comes up in nanotechnology, where one of the main problems is the difficulty of manipulating objects on such small scales. One potential solution is the idea of self-assembly, that instead of making nanostructures by hand, instead what we do is manufacture very basic units that then spontaneously combine with themselves without any outside manipulation to form complex structures. Our research aims to dictate what is created so that we can make algorithms that will build, for example, smaller and less invasive biomedical devices, finer materials, or smaller and faster computer chips, among many other applications. We first introduce the mathematical model of self-assembly that we work with.
So the basic building blocks of our assembly system are Wang tiles, such as these. These are just non-rotatable squares with a glue on each edge, and these glues allow our tiles to attach together. So glues only attach to other glues of the same type, and they do so with a characteristic strength. In addition, we have a fixed parameter in our system called the temperature. The temperature determines the lowest strength bond necessary for two tiles to connect. So in our example above, if the strength of the blue glue is greater than or equal to the temperature, then our tiles will connect as shown. So our tiles assemble into complexes that we call supertiles. And the connection rules for supertiles are very similar to those of tiles. Two supertiles will connect along some boundary if the sum of the strengths of the matching glue pairs along the boundary is greater than or equal to the temperature. So in our example above, only the matching blue and red pairs contribute. So if the sum of the strengths of the red and blue glues is greater than or equal to the temperature, then our tiles will connect as shown. In our system, we hold our tiles and supertiles in several bins. Each bin can contain arbitrarily many of multiple types of tiles. Inside each bin, what happens is that our tiles and supertiles assemble according to these connection rules until we get a final set of supertiles that cannot connect to anything anymore. These supertiles are called terminal. Then, in each stage of our construction, what happens is that the contents of every single bin assembles to a terminal state, and then between each stage, what we can do is we can mix the contents of our bins and add new types of tiles to each bin.
So with this model, what we're trying to do is create assembly systems that will terminally produce certain desired supertiles. However, if we have an assembly system that uses too many materials, too much space, or too much time, it simply isn't feasible to implement this in the real world. So what we're doing is seeking assembly systems that use few tiles and glues, few bins, and few stages. Note that we consider the number of tiles and glues together because it turns out the number of distinct tiles and the number of distinct glues an assembly system uses are closely related. Previous research in staged self-assembly has come up with a single fixed construction of lines and squares each, as well as constructions for a few other shapes. The goal of our research is threefold. First, on broadening the class of shapes that can be created with staged self-assembly. Second, with making constructions more flexible, meaning that the number of tiles and bins can be varied, and when constructions proceed with more tiles or more bins, they proceed faster. And finally, on optimizing constructions, meaning to make them use as few stages as possible.
So now we present four main results, each on building a different class of shapes. These range from the extremely simple line segments to a very broad class of shapes that we call radially monotone. Our first result is on building 1x(n) line segments. So we can construct a 1x(n) line segment with b bins and t tiles in logarithmic time. Specifically, this is O of log base b of n over t if t is greater than b, and O of log base t of n otherwise. Furthermore, we have that this construction is actually optimal given b and t. So below we have a very specific example with just two bins. We start out with a different kind of tile in each bin. And then what we do is we mix both bins into each other. So now both bins contain both types of tiles. Now what we do is we add in a different kind of tile into each bin, such that our tiles connect in different orders, yielding a different 1x3 line in each bin. We can repeat this process to get a different 1x7 line in each bin, different 1x15 line in each bin, any line of length 2 to the k minus 1. So in our research, we generalized to build lines of any length, And then we further generalize this for B-bins and T-tiles. Now we're going to try and build n by n squares. A simple idea for building n by n squares is just to construct the individual columns and then connect them. However, our columns can misalign, so when they connect, this yields undesirable shapes. Instead, what we do is we construct our squares out of these shapes called jigsaw pieces. These shapes connect tightly with no room for slipping, like, well, a jigsaw puzzle. So the great thing about this is we can actually construct our jigsaw pieces in very much the same way as we construct a line. And then we can piece together our final square out of jigsaw pieces in basically the same way that we construct our line out of individual tiles. Therefore, our n by n square construction has basically the same parameters as our line construction.
So now that we can build lines and squares efficiently, we move on to broader classes of shapes, the first of these being monotone shapes. For our purposes, a monotone shape is one whose columns are all connected. And unlike the two previous constructions, we build monotone shapes in temperature 2, which means that two supertiles will connect if they either have a matching pair of glues of strength 2 or greater, or at least two matching pairs of glues of strength 1. So our algorithm for building monotone shapes first picks a very specific border for our shapes. This border is made out of line segments that are constructed in the exact same manner as our line segment construction, except that all glues are replaced with strength 2 glues so that connection occurs in the exact same way. These, it takes logarithmic time to build these since they're built with our line segment construction, and then they assemble to form our border, which we have lined with various strength 1 glues, all represented by red in this image. What we do next is we add in a single tile with strength 1 glues on all edge. Notice the beauty of temperature 2 is that this tile cannot attach with itself to form unwanted shapes, but rather needs two connections to attach anywhere, so it only attaches in the corners. However, as more corners are created, this same tile can continue to attach until we finally reach this terminal configuration. Notice since none of the previous stages were terminal, this only took one stage to fill out the border, and in total, this construction only takes logarithmic time. However, the number of tiles we need does grow linearly with the size of the shape because all of the columns have to be made out of distinct tiles so they can be assembled in parallel. Furthermore, we have shown that this construction is optimal. To do this, we introduce an idea from information theory, the Kolmogorov complexity. The Kolmogorov complexity of a positive integer n is the minimum number of bits necessary to input into a universal Turing machine for it to output the number n. The reason this is relevant to our research is because since assembly under a model is both deterministic and computable, there's a Turing machine which inputs the details of an assembly system and outputs a description of the terminally produced shape. There's a theorem in information theory which puts a lower bound on the Kolmogorov complexity of almost all integers n. We use that along with the definitions of our assembly system to come up with this lower bound for the minimum number of stages necessary in any assembly system, such as the one that builds monotone shapes. When we plug in the details from that construction, we get this bound that it must take logarithmic time to build all monotone shapes. Since that's exactly what our construction did do, we have shown that that construction was optimal. Finally, we move on to an even broader class of shapes, the radially monotone shapes. Radially monotone shapes include all monotone shapes as well as many irregular shapes, such as the one on the left, and in fact include almost all shapes. We define a radially monotone shape to be one which has a center that moving out from which all other tiles can be reached without looping back, such as on the left, but not on the right. We construct all radially monotone shapes in temperature 1 in just one bin. The way this construction works is we first take the center tile of our radially monotone shape, and then in the next stage, we add distinct tiles that form the next ring around the center. In each stage following that, we add in distinct tiles that form the rest of the next ring, and stage by stage, build the whole shape. What we can do with this construction is reuse tiles in every other ring. So instead of using a quadratically increasing number of tiles, we only need a linearly increasing number of tiles. Note that since each ring took one stage, the number of stages necessary to build these shapes grows linearly with the size of the shape. However, using the same theorem from the Kolmogorov complexity, we have also shown that this construction is optimal.
So using the Kolmogorov complexity, we have shown that as you try and build broader and broader classes of shapes, the amount of resources necessary also increases. So our line segment construction proceeds in logarithmic time, and we can use basically any number of tiles and bins. Constant, logarithmic, linear. As long as the number of tiles and bins is greater than some small constant, we can use it. Furthermore, our line construction is optimal, as denoted by the blue. Our square construction has the exact same parameters as our line construction. However, we have not proven that it is optimal yet, which is something that we would like to study in the future. Next, our monotone shape construction. Now, it still proceeds in logarithmic time, but now the number of tiles increases linearly with the size of the shape. And finally, our radially monotone shape construction. Not only does the number of tiles increase linearly with the size of the shape, but now the number of stages also increases linearly with the size of the shape. However, we have shown that our monotone and radially monotone shape constructions are optimal. So this concludes our results. So there are many people who we would like to thank for helping us bring this presentation to you today. First is our mentor, Mr. Jesse Geneson, whose guidance throughout the past year has been invaluable. We would like to thank our respective families for their unwavering support, and we would also like to thank the MIT Primes program, a mathematics research program for high schoolers in the Boston area. And of course, we would like to thank the Siemens Foundation and George Washington University for hosting us and giving us the wonderful occasion to present our findings. Here are our references. Thank you for listening.